Good afternoon, everybody, and I'd like to welcome you to this hybrid meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee. I note for the record that it's the 12th of January in the afternoon. So I'd like to welcome any members of the public who may be viewing this meeting. I'm not sure if anyone is at the moment, but if anyone joins us, they will need to switch off their microphone, so they're muted because it's for them to observe only. I've got a few points to raise before we start the meeting. This meeting will be recorded and the recording has started. Please ensure that any phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Members who are present in the chamber, and welcome to you all, please can you use the microphones when speaking. If you wish to speak or are asked to raise or wish to say anything, please raise your hand. At home that can be an electronic hand, and those in the chambers a physical hand. The next item on the agenda is chairperson's announcement. I've got one announcement to make, and that's in respect of agenda item 6. It actually says on page 79 of that agenda item that the report is for information only. In fact, that's been recorded in error, and the report is for decision. So moving to the next item on the agenda, declaration of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest at this stage?
I see no indications, Chair.
Thank you. Obviously, if anyone has a declaration to make as the meeting progresses, I know they will do so in the normal. Turning to the next matter, it's the minutes of the previous meeting, which is listed at pages 5 to 18 of the agenda pack. Does any member have any comments in respect of accuracy as far as these minutes are concerned?
I see no indications, Chair.
Thank you. Please can I ask for a proposer and seconder to approve the minutes?
I'd propose, thank you.
Rogers. Thank you, Councillor Richards.
I confirm the minutes are approved.
Thank you very much indeed. The next item is agenda item 4, and this report is on pages 19 to 40 and is there for information purposes. Do any officers have any comments they make on this report?
No, Chair. It's there for information. It's an update on the work that's been undertaken by Audit Wales and other regulators up until the second quarter. Justine Morgan from Audit Wales is on the call to take any specific questions members may have on the detail.
Thank you very much indeed. In which case, do any members have any questions?
Nope.
I see no indication. So as previously mentioned, this report is for information purposes only and therefore is to be noted. Turning to agenda item 5, which is the audit of accounts. These are going to be presented by Audit Wales, and the report can be found on pages 41 to 78, and again is here for information purposes. So do any officers have any comments or would the Audit Wales officer like to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to run through this unless any officers want to say anything firstly. Okay. Right, so this is our Audit of Accounts report, our ISA 260 report, which summarises the main findings from our audit of your 2021-22 financial statements. We've completed the audit, but there are just some matters that we need to report to you in accordance with ISAs, and these are summarised in the report before you approve them. Just like to say that we've continued to work with the finance team throughout the accounts process, and I'd just like to express our thanks to them for the help and support they've provided us with in giving us the audit evidence we've needed. I'd also just like to note that the draft accounts we did receive at the end of May, and that the audit work was largely completed by the end of September, subject to a technical issue on infrastructure assets that has affected all other local authorities, not just in Wales, but in England as well. And further details of that are provided in paragraph 16 and 17 on page 48. On to the good news then, the Auditor General intends to issue an unqualified opinion on your financial statements once you've approved them and given us your letter of representation. And the proposed audit report is set out in Appendix 2 on page 52. There are no significant issues arising from the audit that we need to bring to your attention. We did identify some misstatements in the accounts. There's our in Appendix 3 on page 57, but they've all now been corrected. So there's nothing there to draw to your attention. And Appendix 1 on page 9 sets out the letter of representation required from you before the Auditor General can issue his opinion. That's really a quick summary, and if anyone's got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do officers want to make any comment before I turn to members? Nope, I see nothing. Therefore, do any members have any comments or questions they wish to raise in respect of this particular set of papers? Thank you. I see no indication. As previously mentioned, this report is for information and therefore is to be noted. Thank you very much. In which case we will now move to the next agenda item, which, if you recall at the start, I mentioned there was an error, which obviously has now been corrected. And this report, which is listed at pages 79 to 246 of the papers, statements of accounts, is here for decision. I turn now to one of the officers because I know they will wish to make comments on this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report on pages 79 to 246 is the annual report we provide to committee following the completion of the audit of the accounts by Audit Wales. The report highlights the changes that we've made to the accounts since we presented them to you in September 22. Most significant changes that we've made have been in relation to property, plant and equipment, and were highlighted within the report and as part of the Audit Wales ISA 260 report that Gillian just presented. I'd like to draw the attention to the fact that we are once again receiving an unqualified audit opinion, and the report is requesting that the statements, letter of representation and the annual governance statements, which can be found in appendices 1 to 3, we're asking for approval for the chair to authorise and sign off these documents so that we can complete the audit process by the 13th of January.
Thank you very much. I'd like obviously to note the fact as chair of this committee that there is going to be an unqualified audit opinion made at this stage, which is a very important message and is very heartening for this committee. Do any members have any questions? Councillor Aubrey, I believe you wish to say something. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I hope I'm in the right section this time. I'm on the section 3, long to medium term financial plan, F. I was wondering why there's no rating regarding the budget setting for 21-22.
Could you just tell us which page you're on, Councillor Aubrey, just for
Page
completeness?
244, but it also says page 76. So I got to be honest, these reports are a bit, you know, it is confusing with the page numbering.
Yes, it is page 244 in our agenda pack. And as you said, at the top of that page, there is a reference to a RAG rating, red, amber, green rating, and it should actually be completed. So maybe one of the officers can fill in the gap.
And then also, I was just wondering, now that we are coming through the pandemic, is work going to, you know, take place on the medium-term financial plan?
Thank you, Councillor Aubrey. So there are two questions from Councillor Aubrey, and I turn to the officers to respond. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Aubrey, thank you for raising that. Yeah, there's an omission there. There should be a RAG rating, and it should be green in terms of that particular item. So apologies and well spotted. In terms of the medium-term financial plan, as you will know from this morning's seminar, there's a report to Cabinet next week which sets out the budget proposals for next year, identifies the medium-term financial plan gap, And as we mentioned this morning, there'll be a significant amount of work done during the next financial year in terms of addressing that gap. So more information will come through to the Cabinet during the next year on that particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any other members have any further questions? I see no indication. Therefore, if I could ask you all to turn to page 81. On page 81 of this particular set of agenda item 6 papers, there are 4 separate recommendations. I plan to take them in their entirety rather than separately, and I'm going to propose that we accept the recommendations. Could I please have a seconder from amongst the members? Thank you, Councillor Rogers. All right. If members don't indicate to the contrary by raising your hands, I can assume that everyone is in favour of the recommendations. So
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair, so I can confirm that those recommendations have been approved.
thank you very much indeed. We then turn to agenda item 7, and these can be found at pages 247 to 266, which is the Internal Audit Progress Report. And this set of papers are here for information purposes. Do officers have any comments to make about this report?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to update on the quarterly monitoring report that we present to committee regarding the Internal Audit Service. Since we last reported, we were reporting that we were back up to full staffing levels from January this year. However, we have been impacted again by further sickness and lost a further 25 days. This may affect our audit plan. However, the audit manager is currently reviewing this, and we may just about achieve everything that we had going forward. On a more favourable note, I'd like you to note that the 2 members of the team are continuing their internal audit studies and due to take further examinations in February. Again, details of the 15 formal reports that we've issued can be found on pages 248 to 249, with only one audit receiving limited assurance. Details of this report and the conclusion can be found on pages 254, reference R25, with the head teacher's response being in appendix 3 on page 265. Those are the only things I really think we needed to draw to your attention. Happy to take any questions, and either myself or Anne-Marie will respond.
Thank you very much. So do members have any points they wish to raise about this particular set of papers? Councillor Aubrey, I can see your hand is raised.
Yes, I just noticed on page 254, R26, Llangatu Community School, the unofficial funds popping up there again, and just wanting more information about the school bank account and the fact that it was investigated and needs to be corrected.
Thank you, Councillor Aubrey.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the unofficial fund and the bank account, that was 2 separate issues that were identified. There wasn't issues in relation to the unofficial fund which are being addressed. The imbalance of the 830 odd pounds, and I can't remember which way the imbalance is in respect of the school's official account. It's a historic balance. It's the bank reconciliation hasn't balanced for quite some time, and we have drawn their attention to that. We have been assured that they will address that imbalance. Potentially they will need assistance from colleagues within Central Finance to put that right. As members are aware, we do conduct post-audit reviews, and those issues will be revisited by the auditor when we go back to do the post-audit review. Does that answer your question, Councillor Aubrey?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for that explanation. I can see that another colleague in the chamber has their hand raised.
Yeah, I think I was just going to comment. The important thing here is to correct that situation at that particular school, but then also look at the wider environment to see what else is happening to make sure other procedures are in place. I think we've also discussed here about obviously the opinion on reading it. It could be unsatisfactory, but obviously you've got the mitigating controls to support that, which will be reflected in the report. But thank you.
Thank you. And obviously the explanation or the understanding that the internal auditors have has resulted in a limited assurance rating rather than anything else. And obviously, I'm sure this matter will be reported back to the committee in due course. I could see Officer wants to come back.
Chair, if I could just add to the comments that the Vice Chair made, we do audit the unofficial funds in every school that we audit. We also, if we find an issue in one particular school that we feel is sufficiently serious, or we think, hang on, that might be happening elsewhere, we will cascade that to everyone else. The auditors responsible for the schools also meet fairly regularly with the school business managers who are responsible for the administrative processes within the school at least twice a year, and on an ad hoc basis as and when any issues arise within the schools. We do have a very good working relationship with the staff within the schools, and they generally tend to come to us if they have any issues. So we do have a pretty good oversight of it. Unfortunately, we're not there every day, so can't check what goes on. But I just wanted to give the assurance that, you know, that there is more going on behind the scenes than perhaps can be demonstrated within the report.
Thank you for that explanation. And I know that obviously the question of cascading learning points has been in place for quite some time, and obviously is a very important part of the learning for not just any officers, but also for schools and senior managers within schools themselves. Do any members have any further questions? Councillor Richards?
Reference to R32 DBS checks within St Joseph's School. I know you've covered it off, but any comments?
Officers to respond, please.
I'm happy to answer that.
Okay.
With regards to the DBS disclosures, the disclosures had been applied for. They hadn't been received back within the school. We have asked the school business manager that as soon as they are received, then we are sent copies of the completed disclosures as and when they're returned.
Is there issues with the provider giving this information? Is it general or is it just one school?
I think it purely was the issue of when we did the audit and the time that the DBSs were due for renewal. It wasn't an issue that we felt was significant, and hence the assurance rating of reasonable.
Sure.
Thank you very much. I know from experience in other areas that there had been a delay as a knock-on effect of the pandemic, but obviously those knock-on effects should have come to an end, or certainly be coming to an end soon. But I'm fairly sure that the question of DBS checks will be closely monitored, because obviously it's vitally important. Do any other members have questions in respect of agenda item 7? Thank you. No indication is noted. So as previously mentioned, this report is for information purposes and therefore is noted. Turning to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 8. This is the Treasury Management Monitoring 2022-2023 report that can be found on pages 267 to 274. and this is here for monitoring purposes. So would an officer like to make a comment on this particular report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the quarterly Treasury Management Monitoring Report that was considered by Cabinet for information in October, and it comes to this committee for information as well, in line with our scrutiny arrangements. It sets out activity since the last report, and I'm happy to take any questions from any members present. Thank you, Chair.
Before I ask for questions, I do note there's one error, a typing error on page 269 under the heading borrowing. It should read there has been no new as against now new. So noting that, members, any questions on this particular agenda item 8? Sorry, Councillor Peter Richards.
Obviously, because this is a previous report, it doesn't reflect the new bank interest rates.
No, that's right, Councillor Richard. It's because it's a replication of the report that went to Cabinet back in October. It is slightly out of date because this meeting has been delayed from November.
And that obviously cost implications.
In terms, yes, in borrowing and the fact in terms of interest rates on investments as well.
Moving into the new period.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Any further questions, councillors and lay members? Thank you. There are no questions. Therefore, as previously mentioned, this is for monitoring purposes and therefore is noted. Turning to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 9, Register of Regulators Reports and Recommendations, which can be found on pages 275 to 288. This report is here for information purposes. Could one of the officers please make some comments on the report before I ask a question?
Thank you, Chair. So just as a reminder for the committee, this report is provided to provide assurance that there are arrangements in place to consider recommendations that are pertinent to the Council, that are contained in any national reports, local reports that are published by our regulators. So that includes Audit Wales, CIW and Estin. So since the last register was presented to this committee, there have been 13 national reports published, 2 local reports and 1 local letter. Now, they're all catalogued for you in the appendix. In the main body of the report, we have provided a short overview of the content of each of those reports and whether or not there were any recommendations. Where there were recommendations, we've highlighted whether or not they were just for Welsh Government, whether they were for local authorities or for both. So the 13 national reports published, 5 of them contained recommendations for local authorities. Those were direct payments for adult social care, equality impact assessments, the National Fraud Initiative, Poverty in Wales and social enterprises. The first of those, direct payments for adult social care, contained a number of recommendations for local authorities. An action plan has been developed to respond to them and is being presented to the next meeting of the Social Services, Housing and Community Safety Cabinet Board later this month, so I can provide the committee with an update following that consideration at your next meeting in March. The other 4 reports are currently being considered by officers, the recommendations in those, and I can provide a further update in your March meeting. So they are the 5 national reports. The recommendations in the 2, Chair, in the 2 local reports published, there were no recommendations. And in the 1 local letter we received on carbon reduction, that contained 1 recommendation. The response and action plan to that recommendation is being presented to the next meeting of the Environment and Regeneration and Street Scene Services Cabinet Board later this month, and Chair, I can provide an update following that consideration to your next meeting in March. So that's a brief overview of the content of the report for you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Before I ask members if there are any questions, I noted on page 278 there's a reference to something that is written as DARE strategy. I don't like acronyms without explanation, so I looked it up, and it's decarbonisation and renewable energy strategy. But members, perhaps you have some questions. Thank you very much. No indication, in which case this matter was for information purposes only and therefore is to be noted. We then turn to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 10, which relates to urgent items. I can report that I have no urgent items today, and therefore that agenda item is complete. Turning to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 11, forward work programme. That is attached to the paperwork for members to note. Can I ask if there's anything to add to that?
Thank you, Chair. The forward work programme is contained on pages 289 to 292 of the agenda pack. Just want to make a note that there's been a special meeting arranged on the 15th of February at 2 p.m. And then following that will be the March meeting. So just want to make members aware that that meeting was arranged for this committee.
Thank you very much. Obviously, we were due to have met. This particular meeting should have taken place in December. So the fact we've got a meeting in January, February and March is unusual, but it will allow work to be progressed. So thank you very much. Right, next agenda item is agenda item 12, access to meetings. Are members in agreement that we will now move into private session? I propose that we do so, but I'd like a seconder, please. Councillor Carpenter seconds. So members, if you don't indicate to the contrary, I will take it that you are all in agreement that we are going to move into private session.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, in which case I can note the public session will now close. The recording will be halted and we will then move into private session.